Well, welcome everybody. I want to thank you for joining us for another episode of the Journey to Thrive podcast. I'm your host today, Deacon Jim Friend, and I'm the Director of Mission Advancement for the St. John Vianney Center. And on our podcast today is our President and CEO, David Schellenberger. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Jim. It's a great pleasure to be with you again.
Great to be with you as well. Today, for our listeners, we're going to cover a few topics that we want to bring you up to speed on, as well as make you aware of a few opportunities to get engaged with the St. John Vianney Center. But before we get started, I hope if you like this content, you're going to stick around and subscribe. You can subscribe to us anywhere where you download your favorite podcasts, and you can also find us on YouTube. And you can follow St. John Vianney Center on any of our social media platforms, such as LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Well, David, as you know, we're getting ready to celebrate our second day of prayer for the health and wellness of clergy and men and women religious. And that's going to take place on October 18th. And we've been making preparations. We're very excited. And the response has just been wonderful. From your perspective, David, what did you hear last year from our residents and maybe from some of our religious communities and dioceses about the day of prayer?
Jim, the response from the day of prayer internally here at St. John Vianney Center for the residents that we serve, and also externally, was simply remarkable. Our residents here really felt the love and the care that St. John Vianney Center staff went out of their way to dedicate this day for their health and wellness. The level of engagement from our staff, our board of directors, and all of the supporters of our mission was just more than we could have expected. Our residents felt this heartfelt sense of gratitude towards us as staff, and they expressed it dozens upon dozens of times. And then externally, as we spoke to different dioceses, religious communities, different parishes, just our friends of St. John Vianney Center, they thought that the day of prayer was a remarkable opportunity for them. They were able to share the information so that we could gather hopefully thousands of people from all around the country and internationally praying for their health and wellness. And the word that kept coming to mind was just a great sense of gratitude, that they were so grateful that St. John Vianney Center would be a leader in dedicating this day of prayer to them.
Oh, I concur. Everything that I heard echoes what you just said. And I remember our residents just feeling, like you said, a great sense of gratitude that we took the time to put this together. And as you say, I hope that it continues to build each year. We're making this an annual event in October. And for some reason, somebody can't join us on that particular day. All of our events are going to be live streamed. They're all going to be recorded and be there for posterity. But we do hope that everybody will join us. Why don't we just take a second? Maybe we'll just go through the schedule. At 9 a.m., we're going to begin with morning prayer at the Our Lady of Hope Chapel. And all of these events are going to be live streamed. And then, David, you're going to offer a talk on nourishing our ministers with compassion and gratitude. Can you give us just a little bit of a sneak peek on that?
Sure. So this opportunity is one that I really believe is going to be close to all of our hearts. It's about this opportunity about what can we do as the lay faithful to support our clergy and men and women religious. We need to recognize that ministry certainly takes a toll on them. And what's our responsibility to treat them with compassion and gratitude? And most importantly, what are the simple ways that are so often overlooked about how we can support them to continue to minister to us?
And so well said. And, I think that's the other benefit of this day of prayer. Not only are we gathering to pray for our men and women who do so much for us, but raising the awareness for the laity to understand how we can play a better role in supporting them and understanding maybe even some of the pressures that they're dealing with that maybe the average person in the pew isn't necessarily aware of. You and I are aware of it because we've been working for the church for a long time, but But a lot of folks don't realize how much stress goes into, for example, a pastor who's managing a parish by himself that
Mhm.
has 1,500 families, and just all the demands on a person's time and emotionally, as well as just the time that goes into it. And our men and women religious who do so much for us, and have the stresses and pressures of religious life, as well as the jobs that they do for us at parishes, schools, Catholic charities. They do all sorts of jobs for us all around the world. So I think it's a great moment for us, for the laity, to recognize those pressures and how we can better support them. We'll be following your talk, David, by an hour of prayer, and it's going to be put together by our spiritual care team. And we're very excited about this. It's called a Taizé prayer service. And if you haven't experienced it before, it's going to be something a little different. There'll be some chanting. There'll be some meditation time. And so if you do tune in for this, I hope you'll just set that time aside in prayer and quiet time, because it really is a deep and reflective prayer. And we did it once here at our center, and it really got some wonderful reviews and some great feedback from our residents.
It certainly did, Jim. Having the opportunity again to be together in Our Lady of Hope Chapel with the residents and the staff together, I had countless residents come up and say that it was one of the most moving and heartfelt prayer services that they've ever been to. Some of them literally moved to tears by being together with our staff and their fellow residents. It is a beautiful prayer service, and I know that the folks that will be joining us that day will really enjoy it.
And then following that, we'll have a brief welcome video where you can hear some voices from different supporters, from staff, from board members who are part of our mission. And then that will lead into our 11 o'clock Eastern time live stream mass for our day of prayer with our celebrant, Father David Broska, our chaplain here at St. John Vianney Center. So we hope that you will, those who are listening, will share the link and share the good word about the day of prayer. And even if you can't join us on that day, I hope you'll just take a couple minutes that day and just say a prayer for our clergy and religious, and who do so much for us and for their health and wellness in mind, body, and spirit. So let's move on. Speaking of of the need to care for our clergy and men and women religious, I want to talk a little bit about our census here at the center, David. I know that in 2024 it's been a little high, especially over the last 6 months. And I thought it would be interesting for our listeners just to hear from you on how you see the census and maybe some of the causes as to why our population has been up a little bit here at St. John Vianney Center this year.
Sure. Thanks, Jim. Yes, over the past 6 months with our inpatient residential treatment program for behavioral health concerns as well as addictions, we certainly have seen a spike and then a sustainability of the demand for our inpatient care and services. So there can be multiple underlying causes, and I'll just run through what we believe are a few of them. One, we do believe that there are some post-pandemic realities that are now really mounting. So as we all know, during the pandemic, we were hanging on for dear life, great sense of uncertainty, trying to just navigate and find our way. And our clergy and religious were exactly the same. Their world changed in the way that they minister. And what we had predicted, I think, is starting to come to fruition, which is all of the changes that were necessary during pandemic times and all the alterations that needed to go into ministry, like live streaming of masses, doing things more virtual, having greater accessibility, may not be in person, but a lot of it through text, email, social media, etc. All of those mounting demands, if you will, from the faithful rose. And now that we're in the post-pandemic reality for a little while, all of what was pre-pandemic, we as the laity want to also come back. So now we have two demands of what was and what is, And now the clergy and religious are trying to do all of that to serve us. Additionally, as we know, the number of clergy and religious that are in active ministry to serve as they continue to age becomes an increasing amount of demand. So that stress that comes along with that, the anxiety, the sleeplessness, the depression, the compassion fatigue, the risk factors for burnout, falling wayward into maladaptive behaviors like addictions, drinking too much, misuse of prescription medications. These are some of the causes. But if I had one kind of umbrella to put it under, it really is just stress management. And so what have we done to kind of be in front of that demand? So more than just census, we'll talk about the other parts of our ministry. Through our prevention side, which is sharing all of our experience and our resources to keep our clergy and religious healthy, we have increased the amount of access to those preventative measures through education and consultation. So we have done dozens upon dozens of workshops, some virtual, many in person, to share those resources for the men and women that continue to minister. Additionally, our outpatient department, which provides outpatient psychotherapy and spiritual direction, has also seen an increase in demand. So having the access for outpatient services, preventative services, and then our highest level of care, inpatient services, is what we've continued to do to evolve to be able to meet the needs of our clergy and religious.
One of the things I want to mention, David, to any of our men or women religious communities that may be listening to the podcast today, yesterday we launched a survey of our men and women religious communities. We have wondered for many years if there will be anything that might cause a religious community to hesitate to pick up the phone to call St. John Vianney Center with relation to our cost. And so in order to kind of gather some data on that, and this is particularly relevant for our fundraising efforts, to understand, is there a need? And we have developed a scholarship fund. And so for our potential donors, for potential folks who may be interested in investing in providing those opportunities for men's and women's religious communities to have that kind of scholarship opportunity, we're trying to collect some data from our men's and women's religious community. So we launched that survey yesterday. If you're listening to this podcast and for some reason you didn't get it or you don't have the link, I would encourage you just to email me or to email David, and we would be happy to make sure you get a copy of that survey so that your voice can be heard and we can get your input and your feedback on that. It's a very brief survey. I think it's 8 or 10 questions. It'll take you 3 minutes to fill out. But it's really going to provide some great data for our fundraising efforts, and we would really appreciate your participation in that survey. So one other thing that kind of goes along with our census and our life here on campus is the exciting news that we are going to soon break ground on a new building here later in the fall. David, can you tell us a little bit about the inception of, or the need for that building and how it's going to better further our mission and ministry?
Sure. So at St. John Vianney Center, we haven't had any expansion of our physical building since the late 60s. We've certainly renovated and rehabbed certain areas to keep them current and looking great. However, we've outgrown our space. So we have renovated and restored every kind of nook and cranny around here at St. John Vianney Center with our existing structure to meet the great expansion of our staff. We have hired a tremendous amount of staff over the past 5 years, again, to meet the needs of the church. So with the support of the board of directors, we are now on the precipice of being able to break ground for a new 8,300 square foot building that will offer us 15 new offices. It will offer us much needed restrooms for our residents and staff. Additionally, more meeting spaces for those valuable team meetings with the residents, and a multi-purpose large gathering room. Right now, it's impossible actually to fit all of our staff into one area for any continuing education, or to fit all of our residents into one area for any group activities. So this area is really going to be the centerpiece to meet the needs of our residents. We need this space in order to be able to continually serve them, as you mentioned earlier, as our census continues to rise. Additionally, we will also have a staff break room. So at St. John Vianney Center, we have not had a staff break room for many years, and it gives the staff a nice place to go and gather and to be together and break bread. Additionally, this will then free up other existing areas that we will then plan to, in phase 2, to renovate more for resident use. So we're talking about what those possibilities are. The possibilities may be to add more resident rooms with the increased demand, some more common areas for recreation, also to add more quiet spaces for prayer and reflection. So we have great possibilities over the next few years.
That's exciting, David, and I, for one, am very excited about the restrooms because of the spacing and the needs. But there's going to be some wonderful features, and I think it'll also just continue to build community and bring people together in new ways. Probably some ways that we can imagine now, maybe even some ways that we can't possibly imagine now, just because we'll have that extra space and it'll bring us together, I think, in new ways. One of the other areas that we want to update everybody on is our suicide awareness and prevention efforts. And so we began that initiative a couple of years ago. And as some of you know, we began a campaign here called the Good Shepherd Campaign to raise $500,000. Just to recap briefly, a couple of years ago, we conducted a survey of the leadership of dioceses and men's and women's religious communities on the need for suicide awareness training. And we asked a number of questions in that survey. And one of them was, had you ever experienced the suicide of a man or woman in your community or in your diocese? And the number was rather alarming. I believe it was over 24% on average of the dioceses and religious communities had experienced a suicide of a man or woman, religious or member of the clergy. And so we, as a center, wanted to address that, and we've raised over $300,000 towards this new 3-year effort to begin a suicide awareness program for all dioceses and religious communities, really focused in on training. And so, David, I want to turn it over to you just to give us a little bit of an update on that.
Well, this is very, very exciting for everyone that is part of our organization. I know that our residents, our alumni, the board of directors, and we as fellow staff know that this need exists. Sadly, Jim, I just learned yesterday from a vicar for clergy of the death by suicide of one of his clergy members just recently. So knowing that it's still happening, weekly, monthly, it's very difficult to have those statistics, as you could imagine, but we know the impact. And we as a staff here initially 2 years ago decided that we didn't want to find out about that anymore. We didn't want to receive the call to support men and women religious communities or dioceses post death by suicide. We wanted to get in front of that with a prevention and education program that would equip the leadership of the church with the necessary tools to prevent, identify, and then intervene, so that the men and women know that there is hope, there is help. No situation is so dire that dying by suicide should be on the table. So through generous donations from different foundations and individual gifts, we have now raised that amount that you mentioned of north of $300,000, where we're ready to launch this campaign. The first step is to hire a program manager. And we just started to advertise for this position earlier this week. So we're going to hire a person in a part-time or full-time capacity that will lead this program. We'd like to have the person in place by January of 2025 to then start working with the staff here to build this formalized program and launch it out to the diocese and religious communities all around the country to at some point in 2025. So our goal is to look at the country geographically and invite the leadership of dioceses and religious communities to come together to experience workshops and equip them with that. Upon participation in those workshops, they will be able to avail themselves of our programmatic resources through videos, website, print material, ongoing support and consultation here from the program manager as well as our staff at St. John's. We know that this is a need, and we also recognize that this is a sensitive topic. It's very sensitive and it needs to be treated with great care, but it is an issue that we have to talk about. We have to reduce the stigma that is associated with not being okay and continue to find those barriers and overcome those barriers or remove those barriers that prevent our men and women, religious and clergy, from reaching out for good supportive services. And we're going to do that. I feel very confident.
It's exciting to, I remember when we first launched the campaign and we first began to do the research, and it's just been, it's been overwhelming to see how people have stepped forward once they learn about what the issue is and that they want to be a part of the solution. And so I would just offer that if anybody would like to be a part of this, if anybody would like to make a gift or find out more information about the program or where we're at with it, to please reach out to us. Our contact information will be in the show notes of this episode. And then just one final note, speaking of giving, we are launching our annual fund this month. And our theme this year is Renewing Hope, which is so appropriate with our mission that is so centered around faith, hope, and charity. But Renewing Hope is our theme this year for the annual fund. And folks who are on our mailing list will be getting that in their mailboxes in the next week. You know, David, we've had the opportunity for almost 2 years now to engage people in our mission in a new way. And when I talk with our donors or people who are interested in making a gift who may be new to our mission, I just find that they get it right away. I just, you know, it's oftentimes that they never heard of our center, they weren't familiar with our mission, but it makes so much sense to them that we have a place like St. John Vianney Center, really focused around serving the needs of our church ministers, serving the needs of those who serve us in a way that builds community. One of the things that I've seen here at St. John Vianney Center, and I had the opportunity now that I was ordained a deacon a couple weeks ago to be the deacon of the Mass of one of our residents who is discharging. And what a blessing that was for me to serve at Mass with that priest who had gone on his own healing journey and invited me to be a part of his celebratory of his celebration. And so for me, it became very personal in a new way. But for so many, I think they see that we are the community in some ways. While we have many wonderful therapists and many resources, the community of priests and religious and men and women, there's a sense of healing themselves through their own faith, through their own journey as a community. And I was really edified by that experience. But when I speak with our donors, I find that they are so they get our mission. When you look at what you mentioned before about the pandemic and how addictions went way up, and then the awareness of mental health became much more evident when we were in a lockdown situation. And then you look on the other side and you say, well, for a couple decades now, we've been talking about a lack of vocations to the priesthood and to religious life. You put those things together and you recognize that many of these folks are suffering, and and then they need our help, and they encounter the same humanity and the same human condition that we all face. They're not inoculated upon ordination or consecration to the religious life they're susceptible to all of those pieces as we are. So I find that our donors really understand that mission, and they get who we are, what we do, and why it's important. What are you hearing from our donors, or from your own perspective, as to why they give to St. John Vianney Center?
I think you hit it perfectly, Jim, by saying that once folks that we engage with understand what our mission and ministry is here at St. John Vianney, they are just all in. And here's one of the main reasons that I believe that they become supporters and benefactors and donors to our center, is because we all have been affected in some ways in our lives, whether it be personally or friends and family that have been affected by mental health concerns, addictions concerns, or in worst case and saddest scenario, losing somebody to death by suicide. So when they recognize, as you noted earlier, that we are all human, and our men and women religious and clergy were human first before responding so wonderfully to the call from our Lord and Savior, and they take a step back and kind of digest all of the areas of our mission here: prevention, inpatient treatment, continuing care, and also our outpatient services. They're like, wow, what a gem of the church. You know, I think, Jim, you and I know this, and hopefully many of our listeners will now, but the Catholic Church has a supportive healing center for our women religious, men religious, and our priests. That is absolutely remarkable. As being a faithful Catholic and being able to go and share our mission and ministry and share it ecumenically as well. The other denominations in the Christian faith do not have a center solely dedicated to caring for their clergy. So what a gem of the church. And I think that that's what our donors experience. Additionally, when our donors and our new friends get the opportunity to come to campus, to meet really the shining light of our mission and ministry, which is our staff here at St. John's, and then they get to experience our healing environment by touring and spending time with our staff. And then we get to show them truly the shining star of our campus, which is the Our Lady of Hope Chapel. And to know that every day Mass is celebrated, the Sacrament of Reconciliation, the Sacrament of the Sick. We have a full-time chaplain here that is fully dedicated, full-time. His only ministerial assignment is here at St. John Vianney Center to minister to not only the staff, but also our beloved residents. And that every day we're together at Mass with our residents and receive the Eucharist. I'm not sure how anybody could not get it at that point, Jim, quite frankly.
Yeah, it's true.
And that's why we encourage those that are friends of our center and that are interested in our center to contact you or I if they'd like to learn more and to come and experience what it's like to be here on campus.
Well, so well said. And I think a great note to end our podcast on today, David. So for those who are listening, if you'd like more information about giving to St. John Vianney Center, you can visit our website. Again, we'll leave a link in the show notes of this episode. If you'd just like to come for a tour, if you'd like more information, maybe jump on a Zoom if you're in another part of the country, we would love to tell you more about our mission and our ministry and how we're making a difference in the lives of so many. I want to thank all of you. David, first, I want to thank you for joining me today. This was a great conversation. This was fun. And also, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Journey to Thrive podcast. Again, you can download it wherever you find your favorite podcasts, and I encourage you to follow us on our socials on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Thanks again so much for joining us, and God bless you.